Welcome to the Full Audio Books Short Stories channel. The author, Sandy Ingram, holds the print, digital and audio rights.
Osei International Book Series Book 2, written by Sandy Ingram and narrated by Andrew James Roberts. You can click the link in the upper right-hand corner to listen to Book 1. Attractive, shapely, sexy, mature woman are the words Gill used to describe his new case manager at the CIA. Gill knew they made her his supervisor because no one else could handle her. He wondered what made them think he could. Shelley was professional enough. She resorted to flirting whenever there was a gap between her wishes and the desire to give her what she wanted. Her long, blonde, unruly hair was her trademark. There were rumors about Shelley, which Gill did not believe. Shelley didn't give sex away. Shelley was a do what I say, and you might get some of this type of woman. Shelley was a professional teaser. Coming out the foster care system in Virginia, she beat the odds and finished college on a scholarship from the agency. Her secret distrust in men is probably what propelled her career. She was the type of woman most men wanted but could never tame. She was independent, confident, and manipulative, with a schoolgirl attitude towards most men. "They tell me you show no emotions. Is that true?" Shelley asked Gill shortly after he arrived at Langley. "I have emotions, but most times I don't reveal them," Gill replied softly. "Well, what if an asset rubbed up against you like this?" Shelley rubbed her large breast on Gill's back. Gill was standing in the coffee room drinking a cup of coffee as she displayed inappropriate sexual advances towards him. Gill could smell her perfume and understood why American men said women like her were intoxicating. She slowly walks in front of Gill and faces him as she touches his thigh and chest inappropriately. Gill allowed his manhood to stand at attention. Shelley looked down at the front of Gill's pants and began to apologize. "Akinlana, I mean Gill. I'm sorry. I bet the guys I could make you show emotions. I'm sorry, I've gone too far." Gill's back was to the glass, and the men who were looking at them could see the front of his pants, which was extended forward. It took Gill 30 seconds to put his manhood in check. He turned around to see almost the entire office looking at him. Gill smiled that sexy grin and slowly walked to his desk. After arriving home, Gill couldn't stop thinking about how Shelley crossed the line. Then it suddenly occurred to him what she was attempting to do. She wanted to know if he was gay. She could not come right out and ask him. Gill laid down across his bed in his modest one-bedroom apartment. He began to concentrate on Shelley. He thought about the moment she touched his thigh and his chest. He mentally took her into his arms and pressed his manhood against her body. He then, in his mind, made love to her in a way she would never forget. It was his intentions to make her want something she could not have. These moments of sexual mediation were his first indication that he might have feelings for the woman named Shelley. The next morning, Gill did not see Shelley until mid-morning. When she looked at him, he mentally sent his sexual dream to her. Shelley walked over to his desk and softly asked, "Was it as good for you as it was for me?" "Yes," Gill replied with a period, and then asked, "What are you referring to?" Shelley smiled as she walked away from his desk. The same smile Gill had when she touched him in the coffee room. Gill could feel Shelley's gaze from across the room, but he decided not to look up. He liked Shelley. He liked her a lot. She was 10 to 15 years older than he, and she had specialized experience with a world of secrets. Growing up without parents, joining the CIA, and traveling the world on dangerous missions made her a wise and careful woman. Gill could tell she was not surprised by him infiltrating her dreams. He also understood she would never tell anyone. The next morning, Gill arrived to work late. He lived on the southeast side of DC. Sure, it was a rough neighborhood, but he felt comfortable there. Plus, he didn't have people asking him what he did for a living. His neighbors did not care who he worked for as long as he brought beer to the Friday night bid whisk party. On most Friday evenings, he worked late and paid the liquor store to deliver beer to the card party. Shelly was sitting at his desk when he arrived. "Osei, I've got an assignment for you. Step into my office," she said in her professional voice. This meant something was up, and it was serious. "Yes, sir," Gill replied as he quickly followed her, doubling back to pick up a pad and ink pen. Once inside her office, Shelley turned on the electronic wall projector and proceeded to brief Gill. "Are you familiar with a place called Tuel?" Isn't that where the Army Chemical Depot stored deadly nerve agents?" Gill replied slowly. He could tell Shelley was impressed. She continued to speak. "During the Gulf War, they did find weapons of mass destruction, except it was in the form of liquid, not weapons. The public was never told because they wouldn't want to know the details." Shelley wasn't telling Gill anything he hadn't suspected. Shelley continued. "A couple of days ago, the computer system which secures access to the chemical weapons department was hacked. Nothing was taken, but whoever is behind the breach wanted the US government to know they'd broken in." "Why is the FBI not handling this?" Gill asked, already knowing the answer. "Because they couldn't find the breach. They're at a loss. And since there was an indication of one IP address originating in London, they called us in." Shelley knew this was Gill's first assignment, and there was so much information he did not know or did not have. Yet, he maintained a composure of confidence. Finally, Shelley slowly reached across the desk and picked up a folder which she handed him. "All the information is in this folder," she said. "Do you have any questions?" "Not now, but please may I approach you later today with any questions?" he asked. "Sure. I'll block a few minutes off this afternoon, say around 3:30 if you have any questions. I'll meet you here. If not, I'll expect some progress. Oh, yes. If you need to travel, contact the travel department. They'll set you up. All the information's in the file." Shelley walked out of her own office, leaving Gill sitting there with a file folder in his hand. That was her way of saying the meeting was over. Most managers stood up and waited for you to leave their office. Not Shelley. Gill worked with a two-man team to help him with the grunt work. His job was to locate, eliminate, and secure any hacks which were determined a threat to US security. Gill was good at his job. He had an even deadlier technical skill. In his rare form, Gill, aka Osei, was a hacker. More and more, Shelley called him Osei, not Gill. It would be several weeks before she would share why she insisted he use his African name. Osei's new assignment occurred on the same morning the IRS admitted to someone hacking their website and running off with 100,000 taxpayer files. It was crucial that the IRS breach was fixed as soon as possible. The thought of someone hacking into the chemical weapons depot was even more alarming. The press would never be told about the chemical weapons breach. No one was admitting to any weapons of mass destruction. The chemical weapons were not considered to be weapons of mass destruction, yet Osei did not understand what other categories the chemical weapons fit under. He also did not understand why the previous administration did not expose the chemical weapons and clear themselves. Then he realized telling the truth would have meant having to answer a lot of questions better left unanswered. The hackers of the chemical weapons depot were professionals, and they were good. They laid out a traceable path from London to major cities around the world. When Jeffrey, the lead on Osei's two-man grunt team, notified him, he understood how the FBI became confused. Osei thanked Jeffrey, the red-headed computer geek from MIT, the same school Osei was on staff with before the CIA decided differently. Jeffrey, why don't you see if they need your help on the IRS hack? Let Shelley know and she'll prepare the paperwork and see if they need you, Osei said. Sure, boss. But what if she asked me about this job? Osei knew he was right. Shelley would want to know his progress if he were offering his team up for another project. Tell her I'm on my way to London and I will text you any tasks. Sure thing. Jeffrey smiled as he replied. He too understood the around-the-world IP address was a game. The real hack took place in London exactly where it started. Osei telephoned the travel department and was on an overnight flight to London within 5 hours. He kept an overnight bag packed at work just for this type of situation. He was sure Shelley expected him to fly to the chemical weapons facility and not to London. The travel department booked Osei's seat at the last minute, and he was bumped from coach to first class. He wasn't sure if this was a CIA perk or a coincidence. Either way, it was a relief. He could stretch out his long legs and rest his mind. Then he'd go over all the information again to be sure he wasn't missing anything. Using IP addresses all over the world usually sent authorities chasing all over the world. This was the hacker's endgame. Confuse the hell out of everyone. Connect to 10 different IP addresses when everything is accomplished using the original IP address. Osei knew it sounded silly, but more hackers than not used this simple technique, and most didn't get caught because the original IP address was always in a public place. He did not want to explain this fact to Shelley or anyone. This kind of information was job security. London was as cool as the weather page predicted. Osei checked into the hotel the travel department booked for him. This was his first time in London, and he was surprised by the number of different ethnic groups in the city. Feeling more comfortable on his first assignment, he proceeded to locate the internet cafe, where the intrusive act on the US government originated. The internet cafe was in an upscale neighborhood within the city limits of London. Osei sat in the boutique internet cafe and had a cup of tea while he watched the neighborhood surroundings. He quickly decided the cafe was a front, not really the place where the offense took place. The hacker needed a place with less noise and even fewer distractions. Hacking the US chemical weapons depot was no easy task. Osei went outside. To the left of the cafe was a small boutique hotel with Wi-Fi included in each room. To the right of the cafe was an upscale spa for women. Osei immediately went into the hotel and booked a room for the night. Once inside his room, he opened his laptop to find all the internet connections available in the area, including the internet cafe's IP address. He found exactly what he was looking for. The hacker or hackers used the internet cafe's Wi-Fi while staying in the hotel. What Osei needed now was the law enforcement support to help him locate the hacker or hackers. He immediately called Shelley to ask her to intervene and get the ball rolling with the UK authorities. He needed to know exactly who had checked into the hotel during the time of the breach. None of this could be done without the support of the local authorities. Gill had no legal right to arrest anyone. London? Shelley asked once she got on the phone. Yes. I found exactly where the hackers breached the depot. Osei replied with his sexy voice. He could add a touch of sex to calm the waters and get what he wanted. Shelley was as shrewd as she was intelligent. She delivered when it counted most. She teased her way right into the heart of the chief of police in London, offering herself as an FBI agent who really cared. Osei was given contact information for the chief's second in command. London was not told of the latest chemical addition in the US chemical weapon depot, only that the facility had been breached from their city. Just knowing chemical weapons were involved was enough to get the UK's full attention. Within 2 days, the London's police found the possible hacker. Osei was then encouraged by the London authorities to return home. He wanted to speak with the alleged hackers, but London police insisted it was not necessary. Osei was new on the job, or he would have demanded to learn more. The UK knew all too well the CIA would be more inclined to hire the hacker than send him to prison. They'd already figured out that Osei was with the CIA and not the FBI. You could not blame the CIA. No one wanted hackers sitting in prison telling other prisoners how they hacked a chemical weapons depot. Extradition of the hacker was not requested. Osei allowed the UK to send him home, which was a mistake. Once he arrived back at Langley, Shelley helped Osei realize his mistake. Osei, you did a respectable job finding the hacker. There was a pause, and Osei knew there was more. I sent an experienced agent to London to further the investigation. We need to know more about this guy. Okay. Is there anything else I can do? Osei responded. He knew he'd left the UK far too soon. He should have been more forceful with the UK authorities. Yes. Send the senior agent all the details on the case, and next time, before flying off into the blue, let me know. I can protect you from people who think they know what's best for this country. Yes, madam, Osei replied softly. And Osei, Shelley said flatly. Don't madam me. I'm only a couple of years older than you. Shelley winked and walked away. The next morning, Shelley acted as if the UK incident never happened. She was on to another assignment. Osei, can I see you in my office for a moment? I've got a special assignment for you. Sure, I'll be right there, Osei replied, happy to see Shelley wasn't angry with him. Osei, take a seat. One more person will be joining us, Shelley mumbled as she looked through the stack of papers on her desk. Osei sat quietly while Shelley organised herself, and just in time. The section chief of the department walked in and slid into the seat next to Osei. He extended his hand and introduced himself before Shelley began to explain why Osei was called in. Osei, we keep getting chatter about a fifth and sixth cell which did not activate on 9/11. Normally, we would let this issue rest due to the enormous number of reports already completed about the 9/11 attacks. However, almost 10 years later, and the chatter continues about Cell 5 and 6. Osei was all ears. This assignment certainly held his interest. The section chief started giving Osei particulars about the assignment. The airline gave us the names of all the passengers on flights from the East Coast to the West Coast on that day, particularly on that morning. We believe the West Coast and East Coast strikes were to coincide with each other. Shelley grew impatient and quickly added, We want you to hack the airline's files and figure out for yourself who the possible 8 cell members were on the 2 additional flights bound for California. We believe one flight was headed to Los Angeles and the other flight to San Francisco. And several of these guys used fake IDs, using American names. I'd like to use a different word than hacking, said the section chief. Osei smiled. Sure, I can complete the research. Shelley stood up. Good. I forward the details of the mission to you. And with that statement, she headed for the door. While Osei and the section chief were still sitting in their seats, Osei was elated that he, a new guy, would get to work on a high-profile assignment like 9/11. His mind was moving 1,000 miles a minute, designing programs that would provide the information he needed in the least amount of time. He'd only review previous reports after he'd completed his own report. This was an assignment which had a personal appeal to him. Osei always believed there were additional cells operating on that day and wondered why these cells were not activated. His personal thoughts were Cell 5 and Cell 6 were enshrouded in fear and couldn't finish the job. But what if there were other reasons? Hacking was not the correct word to use for the assignment. The airline gave the agency access to its records and information. However, he understood Shelley wanted him to dig deeper and into places where access was not provided, and she wanted the orders to come from the section chief. That would be the only reason to give the assignment to a non-existent department within the CIA. Reliable chatter was an important part of discerning assignments and missions. Regardless of what reports or politicians from other countries said, the chatter was almost always the most reliable source. Why would the terrorists still be talking about cell number 5 and number 6, almost 10 years after the incident? Were they teasing the guys because of a failed mission, or was the reason a hindrance which they still had not gotten over? Osei was aware both planes that hit the Twin Towers were bound for California. He, like Shelley and the section chief, also believed there were plans for at least one other airplane to rain terror in the state of California on that day. This work was cut out for him, and he plans every detail of preparing a software program, which would compare names, addresses, database information on each passenger on flights from the Northeast to California on United Airlines and American Airlines on 9/11. He was looking for 4 to 5 passengers on any of the flights who had commonalities, especially same address, birthplace, arrival dates in the United States, commonalities, or similarities. He was looking for invisible connections between people. Unlike the section chief, Osei did not believe the long-distance terrorist flight plan was set to happen at the same time as the Twin Towers attack, because of scheduled flights of the two major airlines. He did believe the West Coast attack was to occur later in the day, just when America believed the troubles of the day were over. Osei's goal was to find the potential terrorist and identify why the 5th or 6th attack did not occur. Was the 5th and 6th cell only a backup? Osei completed the software program within days and then allowed the computers to do the work. Hacking into the airline's information was a piece of cake, as was connecting the FBI's database to identify each passenger on American Airlines and United Airlines flights to California that day. He then connected the image software program to bring up images of each person. Missing information automatically made you a person of interest in Osei's mind. The software program didn't yield any unseen connections between people on any of the flights from the East Coast to the West Coast on 9/11. Osei could feel in his gut that there were other terrorist cells with 4 to 5 hijackers on airplanes, which did not activate on 9/11. Without proof, his report would report no findings. It was during this time, when he was beginning to feel his actions were useless, that Shelley walked over to his desk and placed a file in front of him. "Find this child." She then simply turned and walked away. Osei opened the file and it was less than 60 seconds before he realized he'd been working on a shadow mission. A mission which is performed to protect the actions of the real mission. The State Department had a weekly complaint from one of the hijackers' mothers. She informed the State Department that her son admitted to fathering a child in New York City, before he boarded Flight 93, the flight that crashed in Pennsylvania on 9/11. The mother insisted that her son sent her a detailed letter explaining the hookup between himself and this wealthy American white woman who paid a service called Midnight Pleasures to help impregnate her with no strings attached. The mother reported that he received a large sum of money for sleeping with the woman and a handsome bonus when it was determined that the woman was pregnant. This hijacker entered the United States on 7 different occasions before 9/11 and was independent of other cell members. He was 26 years old at the time of his death, and he wanted his mother to know he fathered a child before he died. Osei determined the child would be about 15 years old. Now, the real hacking begins. Osei needed to make digital contact with a company named Midnight Pleasures in NYC between 2000 and 2001. He needed to get direct information from the grandmother of the child on the exact dates, if she knew, and any other details. As it turned out, the hijacker himself came from a family of wealth, and his mother hired the best international attorney possible to help her find her grandchild. Osei was only able to communicate with the attorney, and the details were foggy. The mother received the letter from her son in late September of 2000, which means the child was probably born between May and June of 2001. Surprisingly, the grandmother's private investigators gave her the names of 3 women who used the service and were impregnated during this period. Now, all Osei had to do was hack the company's files and find which one of these 3 women was the mother of the hijacker's child. The work was easy for Osei, and he wondered why the agency placed such a highly classified assignment on his desk. Turns out the child was a boy. Osei included the details in his report. He could only imagine the CIA would set up a file on the child and watch him from afar. I can neither confirm nor deny this story was inspired by true events. But what I can confirm is Book 3 is coming soon.
If you enjoy the short stories created for Sandy's YouTube channel, please subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when new audiobooks are uploaded.